Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Russell White, and this is the Q equation, quantum chaos theory for quantum mechanics as we move forward, as we develop it into a technology. That technology is called Consequia. And what is Consequia? Consequia is effectively the security system for the internet, which is a social enterprise security solution. What you've got on the screen, is effectively the brain of that said system. It is the Q equation, it is the Q algorithm, and it is the Q blockchain sequence that will be used for the system. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is to show you effectively the blueprint of the system we're about to create. So you can see, just by looking at it, it is obviously there's an alphabetical and numerical sequence, obviously within a series of circles. And those circles are partitioned into 12 sections. So there is 72 states on the screen on each layer. So there's 72 plus states, because the states will continue to go up. We'll talk about that later. But there's always 12 partitions, 1 to 12, and obviously prime numbers throughout. And because they're obviously positioned in a certain location, they are effectively called superpositions. So yeah, look, to break down, it is the Nikola Tesla 369 theory, re-engineered by me, Russell John White. I like to call it the quantum chaos theory. It is based off the quadratic equation. Now, you can see now I've got me a little stick here so I can point at things as we go, so that you can see what I'm actually talking to as we go. But as you can see down here at the bottom, you've got the equation. So this equation here is a basic way to explain this whole section. Quite simply, it is A plus minus B equals C squared. That is basically the fundamental principle of the whole equation. But A plus minus B equals C squared is also 369, YZX, 1, 2, 3, etc. And that's a sequence that obviously follows the same patterns. Now, we'll get to that in a minute, because there's a matrix, obviously. Now, plus, when we have a look at plus, as I said, we're talking about multiple lines running in parallel. So basically here we've got, at the very top, you can see you've got the golden ratio, you've got pi, you've got infinity, and you've got wave function. For this system, it's effectively the entropy that we use the math, obviously, to manage all aspects of the system. Then that equals O, effectively. Everything starts at O and everything finishes at O before it moves into the next layer of the equation, and it will continue to go, it'll continue to create layers from the present into the past. And then obviously by creating those layers, we're able to then predict aspects of your future depending on what you've done. And so we'll touch on that. If you have a look here, you've got 3, 6, 9, but you've also got 3, 6, 9. Now that creates a Star of David. You can see that straight away. Now this line that runs straight across from 1 to 7, you can see there, 1 to 7 here. 1 to 7 is the tangent line, which is space, and 4 to 10 is the narrative line, which is time. So you can see it here, and the entropy written at the top. And you can see how it's plus on one side, negative on the other. And 1, 4, 7, 10. 1, 4, 7, 10. Okay? So that creates this line here. This line is space, which is the tangent line. This line is time, which is the narrative line. So narrative, tangent. It's time, space. Everything created at the center, and you can actually see there is a representation of time at the center. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we've explained a little bit of that. You can see that there is an alphabetical sequence that follows 369 throughout, and you can see that in red. And then you can see there's a numerical sequence, but also an alphabetical sequence that starts in blue and cascades around all the way up to 36. And you can see that everything has a pattern, everything fits. It just does. Like when I was putting this together, it wasn't very difficult. It did come together really quickly. It was like I was meant to. It was like I was meant to do it anyway. So if you have a look up here, we have a timestamp. So we have like this whole equation. Multiple things are happening in the background. You'll be able to see it interact. You'll be able to see it move and hop from location to location depending on what it's doing. It'll create glyphs. It's really is a revolutionary way to look at a system, because you're not just combining one technology, you're combining all technologies into the one and trying to create a method in which to manage everything. So here we have a look at the time, and effectively time is at the center. So everything starts at O. So nothing can be created above the line, only everything is created below the line, if that makes sense. So this whole section here down is the past. There's the present, there's the future. Okay? In the center, when it starts, a time line at 0, it'll always start at 6. It'll go 6, 9, 3, 6, which is effectively, as I said up here, 1, 2, 3, 4, as you can see. But it continues. So as it goes around and it takes time stamps of information, it will also have a timestamp here of within the triangle as well. So yeah, it's so 6, 9, 4, 3 is also 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, which is also very similar, because every time it hits the 6, it's 1, 4, 7, 10. Do you see the sequence? Anyway, so here we'll take a step away from there. All right, so we've explained that there's a timestamp, starts in the middle. Everything starts from 0. Obviously, below the line is everything that's created in the past, but obviously predicting the future is completely up to the system. And obviously, that's the reason why there's a complete copy of the 369 above the line and below the tangent line, separated by the narrative line. Anyway, so we go to cones of light here. You can see right here from this diagram right here. I mean, it's pretty obvious that it's right here. You can see this double helix. Yeah, straight through here. Yeah. Now, there's also photo 51, if you haven't seen it. Also shows a double helix with a series of circular patterns coming out in a circular object. Yep. And I better touch that before it goes down. There we go. That's better. So the interpretation, as I was talking about before, 1 is the present, 2 is the past, and 3 is the future. And that's represented in this diagram. The cones of light, which I was talking about, I've already kind of explained. This here is the future, this here is the past, and everything is created at the present. Now you'll look down here and you'll say, why is there a square, not a triangle? Why is there a square? Well, I couldn't create the individual states. So you can see how there's 1 through to 12, and then 13 through to 24. They're the states, and they go up to 72, and that's each individual block that stores information. So each state is effectively a room or a block for a blockchain, for a source of information or a sequence of information, and each one obviously connects to the other, because we can't just have all the information in one set point, and we need to be able to share information between other users and share database information, and that comes into the Qcoin process, which I won't discuss too much here, but with the system when it's created, there will be a Qcoin process which will use this method as well as the rest of the system. It will completely control and govern everything that the system has to offer. So as I was saying to you before, this is each individual state. So just say this is state 1. Within each state, there is its own public and private key, and there is also a system key. So there's actually 3 keys. There's a system key, there's a public key, and there's a private key for each individual equation, for each individual block. So there's the actual equation itself will have its own set of code, and then each individual block will have its own individual set of code as well. Effectively, it's like well, as you know how blockchain works, each block is different, but you need the last block to identify you need the last block to identify the next, and so on and so forth. So yes. All right, so we have a look up here, the triangle. We touched on that before. We have 3, 6, 9, and 3, 6, 9. You can see right here, same premise as down here, same premise as up here. You started on a specific location. I always start from the right, obviously center, then right, then rotate as a circular motion throughout the golden ratio effectively, as you can see throughout this equation. But here with the triangle, as I said, as it goes 3, 6, 9, 3, 6, 9, 3, 6, 9, and goes through that cycle, each step being agenda, behavior, consequence. Agenda, behavior, consequence squared. It's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. As you can see, your 9 is at the top of the apex. You can put your 3, your 6 on either side. The whole purpose of that is you need to be able to identify that A or 3, which is an agenda, could be on the left or the right. Same with the behavior. The behavior could be on the left or the right. So we need to be able to identify that. This is just a standard glyph. But yes, these two here is the only aspects of the equation that I obviously want to be able to shift between one or the other potentially, because we don't want it to discriminate. These A, B, C are fixed superpositions. So obviously the C is never going to move. The A, the B are obviously fixed. But in order for it to interpretate right, the agenda plus or minus behavior equals a consequence squared, which is also 369 YZX 123 squared 4 throughout this equation as it rotates. As I said, it's very complicated with a time stamp, everything, and a unique sequence, which we still haven't even got to yet because I'm babbling on. But yes, what we'll do now is, as I said, we'll skip down just quietly down to here, and then we'll explain more of this. If you do A, E, I, O, U, it creates this like arrow head. You can see how it creates like an arrowhead. And then if you have a look at the tip, you'll see this line here has a series of 9s. See here, 999 squared. So you can see 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9. Now that comes up with the sequence, and it's just quite coincidental that Q will obviously run this through here. It's also 3, 6, 9. As you can see here, the 0 becomes 6. That we'll get into the partitions and how that all works, and the narrative lines and the tangent lines and everything else as they all get as we all advance through this. Obviously, understanding the system is very complicated. I understand people are going to be looking at this thinking, Jesus Christ, this guy's obviously put everything down on a piece of paper, but what does it actually mean? Well, what it actually means is it's just an alphabetical and numerical sequence for a system to use to secure a quantum method, so that way we can protect ourselves in the future against quantum threats and fraud, abuse, and waste, basically. So yeah, anyway, A, E, I, O, U will create like a glyph. And then this line is created to signify the 999 that obviously comes at that point, because it kind of looks like an arrowhead. But as I said, different numbers, different letters, different words will create different sequences and glyphs within the system. Now, I can see how that would work and how that would be advantageous to systems and programs and people understanding the system moving forward. So that's the way I look at it. Anyway, so you can see here on the screen, you can see that there's a plus sign, there's a times, there's a divide, and there's a minus. You can see over here I've got like a positive side and a negative side. You can obviously see that this is the positive side and this is the negative side. Yes? That's basically the way that I've tried to do it. And obviously you got a plus and a minus, and here you've got a plus and a minus. You got your A plus B. It makes sense. Yeah? Anyway, as I said, you've got an alphabetical and numerical sequence. You can see that it starts at 0. And then here you can see that I skip from 0 across 1, 2, 3 circles to start at A. you see how that works? I've created a core. Now that core and this equation is based from the basic equation. So when you have a look at the basic equation, which I'll show you at the end of this quickly, what I'll do is you'll see that the sequence that I've actually used in this actually comes from the basic equation, which was the image that I created on the 25th of December 2017 while at Phillip Island between 10 and 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, as a deliberate ploy to understand how to explain human factors within a system. So it was completely deliberate. And then that vision that I had with the atom and the alphabetical and numerical sequence within the atom was then re-engineered to the detailed equation, because obviously it required further explanation, because it was creating a sequence that was completely unique, and I knew that it wasn't everything, and I knew that I had to work it. So this is me working the system and creating the equation for humanity. I know that a lot of people are going, Jesus Christ, what's this guy on? You know, how many drugs has this guy had? Well, to tell you the truth, I've had quite a few, but that's not the purpose or the point. The point is I have a life lesson. As you can see, this is obviously articulated a certain way so that we can create sequences within behavior. Now, as you can see, you've got 3, 6, 9, 3, 6, 9. That's going forward, that's going backward. That is the system factor. And then you have a look over here, you've got 3 A's, and over here you've got B, D, B. Now, the reason why that is because 3, 6, 9 is very similar to A, B, C. Only as the system factor runs in the middle over time, we run over time and the system factor as the human factor. So A, B, C squared is agenda plus or minus behavior will equal a consequence squared over time. So each section, as we're moving around, we'll be doing multiple things, as I said, and this is one of them. The step-by-step process is there. So as that step-by-step process is going on, you'll see here is an A sitting in the middle. That A sitting in the middle is effectively a tangent, so it's a step for information. So as you are filling up A, or doing A, so A goes to A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, then it hops again, S, T, U, V, W, X, X marks the spot, Y, Z, Y, Z, O. Yeah? So basically you're going around the alphabet in an alphabetical and numerical sequence, as that's going, it's also, see, when you're on one, to fill, when you're on A, the first A, to fill A, to complete it, you'll have to actually go through this cycle as well. So you can see you got 1, 2, 3, 4 to fill A. Does that make sense? To finish A, you'll have to complete a sequence or part of that. You don't have to complete the whole thing, but obviously 36 would mean that obviously that section is full. Same with 1. So 0, so before you even get to all that, I should have said this at the start. It goes 0 to 1. Right? 1 is the state of the information. 1 is the room, it is the blockchain, it is the database. So 1 is actually 0, right, to A, B, C, through the sequence, all the way to X, and then a conclusion with Y or Z to determine whether it's left or right. It's really that simple. As that's happening, information is going into this state. And obviously we're using both alphabetical and numerical sequences to secure the blockchain. Then obviously when we move on to the second, the same thing occurs. As you are going to B, as an example, it goes A, B, C, all the way around to 36, then back to 0, then to 3. As I said, it would continue. So yeah, that's basically, there's different ways of looking at it. So when you, as an example, when you have a look at the very beginning, you can see that A is a 3, B is a 6, C is a 9. Now that's a constant throughout the entire process. But D, as an example, is a 3, E is a 6, and F is a 9. So the sequence continues like 1, 2, 3. It's also A, B, C. Yeah, it's also 3, 6, 9. We're using different alphabetical and numerical sequences, right, to create a series of lines of code that we can use wave function type technology to create the right frequency to secure the algorithm and the code effectively. And it can be achieved with creating this and using this method. Now, what else have we got? You can see that once it gets to Y and Z, obviously with 25, 26, you can see here, 27 becomes 1, rotates all the way around to 36, 36 becomes 0, 35 becomes 9. So as I said, this actually creates the alphabetical and numerical sequence for everything. It becomes the template of everything. And as you can see that the outer images, there are plus, times, divide, and minus. As you can see by looking at those, there is obviously going to be more room. So the whole purpose of putting that there was I ran out of room. I wanted to keep it locked at 72 states for obvious reasons because of the significance of 12 and 369 and 3 and everything else. In stating that, it seemed to just want to just conclude at that stage. So what I'm trying to say is when state 1 goes all the way around and the database is filled to 72, this is just a layer of a database, a section. When 72 is finished, you'll go back to 0, then 1 will become 73 and a new layer will be created. And as an example, 28 will become state, room, or blockchain 100. So, as I said, you can see that there's a lot there. And the beauty about the prime is if you do 369 sequences, right, the first prime that you get after 3 through the 369 sequence, if you follow it, you don't get another until the 60s. So you're not getting another prime number until you actually get onto this outer layer for some reason. I don't know why. It just does. But anyway, when you have a look at 369, 369 does appear in very, very odd and very strategic places. So if you have a look here as an example on the outer ring of the alphabetical and numerical sequence, you can see each block, each section of significance, has 369 in it. See, 369, 369, 369. Yeah, as an example. So, and then as I said, you want to look for the next 369, the one on the outer as an example, you got one here. So 3 leaps across the middle, the 0 becomes a 6, 9. See how it works? 3, 6, 9, 3, 6, 9, 3, 6, 9, 3, 6, 9, 3, 6, 9. Anyway, 369, as you know, is agenda plus or minus behavior equals a consequence squared, and we went through that. And then we went through that obviously there's other factors, and then there's even more factors that we bring in, obviously, fundamental math principles and re-engineer it all into the one equation, so that way we can create and manage the entropy within the system, which is effectively the reason why we have the wave function there. But look, I could keep talking. There's more to it than that, obviously. I'll quickly explain just this last section. I touched on it, but didn't. I got distracted. I got on a tangent. Outer layers, more outer rings will be created, but you won't actually see. So when you actually see the diagram, you will see everything that's on here, as an example. But as we expand it to secure the algorithm, we are going to create more circles within the same foundation of 12. And we are going to put everything within a keyboard within the outer sequence, but you won't see it. So that when all these obviously extras that you won't see will be the way that we secured the algorithm. So you'll have the standard that everyone will use, and then you'll have the outer area that you can fully customize. So that way when you create something, to you, you'll have the standard template, but you'll also have the custom template. So each image is created and you use anything on a keyboard outside of the standard that's on here, but yeah, it'll create a different kind of pattern to you because your patterns and your symbols, as an example, will be in your own superpositions or your own selected states or your own random states, so they won't be able to be copied. So it's like a way of having a standard, but then expanding the standard so that way you can have a custom sequence to go with your standard to help secure the algorithm. So it makes sense. It's just like, yeah, it's just another layer of security to obviously create a unique method to obviously manage information. So as we manage information, we require a sequence. This is obviously a sequence with a lot of tech and a lot of math and a lot of theory all thrown into one. But this is the quantum chaos theory. I believe it's quantum mechanics as we move forward. I believe this is the quadratic equation re-engineered by me. It is a Nikola Tesla inspired initiative, and it's definitely very unique. So before we go, I will just show you a few things. Okay, so so there's a lot to explain Consequia. There's the book of Consequia, there's the book of Q, that explains the light cones. There's the 2016 version of Consequia, there's the 2017 version, there's Consequia explained in a flyer, there's the Constitution of Consequia, there's the Declaration of Consequia, there's the Global Manifesto, sorry. There's the Consequia and Q icon. There's just the Q icon by itself. Light and frequency is obviously involved in this system. There is your photo 51. You can tell what I was talking about before. You can see that from a mile away. We have the Q algorithm that's explained by AI. Then we actually have the algorithm itself. The basic equation, I'll bring that up in a second. And there's the Q coin as an example. That's just what we're going to do with the, we won't get into that too much, but that's the Q coin. Star of David was the foundation that created this, the basic equation, and then obviously that is the detailed equation. Your visible light spectrum, what is entropy, and I've got a white paper on Consequia and Q+. So what we'll do quite simply is I'll bring this up. Star of David, that's where I started. So that's how I got the sequence. So I was thinking I can't leave the equation like that, and I can't expand the equation like that. So how do I improve it and how do I expand it, basically? So I thought that I would put that, the contents of that, because it's at 12 points, within an atom. So that's what I did. So you can see right there, there it is. The same alphabetical and numerical sequence. Yeah, but within an atom. So you can see the AABBCC, which is effectively the same as 3, 6, 9, and as you can see, there's the inner core, and then the outer core, and then the outer numerical sequence, and then you can see how that, becomes that. And that is it for today, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that I confused you more than I confused myself. But as I said, everything has an alphabetical and numerical sequence. The information will be used, obviously, in tech. That tech is called Consequia. That is Consequuia. It means service, protection, and consequence in Latin. And I am creating the security system for the internet. And this equation that you're seeing right now is effectively, as I said, the Q plus equation. Now, if you've ever heard of Q before, QAnon, that is obviously Donald Trump and his followers. Donald Trump is Q. I am Q plus. And I am Q plus because of this equation. And Q plus being to question, for quantum, for quadratic, for everything, really. I mean, for some reason, there is some special significance with Q. As I said, it's right here. It follows that beautiful line through the middle there of the 999. And then, obviously, it's right there at the top of the equation. So you've got Q, then you've got 10, 22, 34. It's beautiful. I just love it. Everything just has a place, and everything just has a method. I mean, there's so much to this. I just can't wait for the tech people to get into it and really start turning it into a reality. Because really, at the end of the day, all it is at the moment, fellas or ladies and gentlemen, is a theory, and that theory has to be developed into something. But the method is there, and the method to the madness is there, and that's the reason why it's here. So I just have to say one more thing before I go. The reason why I'm doing this is because we don't have a standard to manage human behaviour. But this will be the standard. But at least that way everyone knows what the standard is, and that way everyone can be held accountable. And the biggest problem with our planet, quite simply, is we have people of authority that have too much authority and too much power, and the reality is everyone's oppressed. And this system will create a free and fair system that everyone will use, and because they want to be secure and safe online, this will completely eliminate fraud, abuse, and waste. This will be the AI that you fully interact with, that you see what's going on in the background. You don't have to have it up and running, this part, but you can bring it up as like an aspect of how does it actually function, and how does it flicker through the information, and you'll see that it will create a totally new alphabetical and numerical sequence for managing everything. And once we have that standard, the evolution of humanity will be absolutely supreme. So that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get us to the freest, fairest, safest humanitarian system for the re-engineering of society to a standard where everyone is protected regardless of race, colour or creed. So thank you very much for your time. As I said, I know it's very confusing, but yeah, at the end of the day, once it's developed, it won't be. So yeah, hopefully Donald gets back to me soon and I can commence. Thank you.